Hey guys, Argent here. I sometimes forget that a lot of my viewers come from across the world, particularly Britain, and that they're not very familiar with kind of the nuances of American politics. And to be fair, America has a lot of kind of things that are very strange and different from other countries in the world. A lot of that's just because the American political system has probably changed the least out of most republics. Um, most republics go through a new constitution every couple of decades, and America's had the same one for 300 years. And while some aspects of the political system have changed, it's largely the same. So, the presidential primaries. So let's just go into this. So, I think most of you are probably pretty aware of how the Electoral College works. Let me just bring up a map of that. Basically, on election day, all the states are assigned electoral college votes. These votes are distributed based on population. For instance, California is by far the largest state, so it gets the most. Texas and New York get the lot as well. Ohio's a pretty big state, so is Florida. Whereas tiny states like Montana, Idaho, Wyoming get very few. So what happens election day is everyone in those states vote, and it's done by winner take all. So if the Democrats get they get more than that, but let's say the Democrats get 51% of California, they get all 55%. They get all 55 electoral college votes. If they get 49%, they don't get anything. Um, and it takes 270 or a majority of the electoral college votes to win. Um, there have been a couple cases in history where no one succeeded in getting a majority of the electoral college votes, in which case Congress gets to choose who the president will be. That's one of the few things that have changed over time. It used to be whoever came in second place would be the vice president. But that's changed now, and people will pick their running mate ahead of time. It should be noted that there is an even number of electoral college votes at the moment. I'm not sure how much it's changed, but during the last election, there was a very real possibility that it would be a tie and that the Republican controlled Congress would vote in favor of Romney. So that is a possibility. So whoever gets 270 by putting the various states together wins the election. Now, it should be noted that this is just from 2012, the dark red ones are the ones where Romney was leading by more than 10%, and the dark blue ones are the ones where Obama was leading by more than 10%. So those are basically, people don't even bother campaigning in those. There's no real point to campaign in Texas. It's going to go Republican. There's no real point in campaigning in California. It's going to go Democrat. But we have a bunch of states which are called swing states, like Florida's a big one, Virginia, Ohio, New Hampshire, Iowa, and Colorado, which can go either way. So if you're trying to get a majority of the vote, as you can see, most of the electoral votes are already locked down. Obama had 184 in reliably Democratic states, and Romney had 170 in reliably Republican states, so you try to piece together a victory from the remaining ones. Why am I talking about this for the primary process? Because the primary process is pretty similar. So let's go to a map of it. Let me just see. Sorry. Okay. So states have delegates, which is kind of similar to the electoral college, but the delegates are selected. It depends on the state. I think some states have winner take all, so whoever gets the most votes gets all the state's delegates. Some states have a caucus system, which is kind of, I don't entirely understand how it works. People basically get together on a community level, pick who they like after a discussion, and then they get assigned delegates. Some states will just have proportional representation, where all the people will just vote. Um, and whoever gets, and the votes are, the people are kind of, the delegates are distributed based on it. Like if there's 10 votes and 10 delegates and the Donald gets 40% of the vote, he gets 4 delegates. Some states will use like weighted voting. Some states will use uh, DeHalt or the Jefferson method. There's a bunch of different ones. Um, and yeah, but basically, you need to get a majority of the delegates to win. Now, it should also be noted that there are things called super delegates, who are people who get to vote at the convention, um, and don't have and can vote for whoever they want. This includes like major party officials, governors, members of Congress, senators, just important people in the party who they feel have a stake in it. So the delegates are just ordinary people, and this is kind of how it works in other countries to a certain degree. Um, Generally, in other countries, it's the votes are all held across the country, and the convention will start with a certain number of delegates from each district who are committed to vote for person. Now, in Canada, for instance, it's very seldom that any candidate has a majority. So you'll have ballots. So they'll have the first ballot. It will be a tie. Then, normally speaking, the candidate who's in last will step down and pledge support to another candidate, maybe in return for a political appointment or something like that. Someone gets a majority, or etc. And what often happens then is if someone gets out of the race, sometimes the person who everybody likes second most will win. Because it's not uncommon for whoever the front runner is, say Hillary, to have a majority of the support, but to be hated by pretty much everyone. Like, it could be a four-way race, and none of the people for the other three candidates will vote for her if any of the other three bow out. So, as you can see, it's pretty similar to the presidential election, where it's distributed by state, by population. So when they have the primary in, say, Iowa, 28 delegates will be distributed based on how well people do. When they have Texas, 155 will be distributed, etc. Now, it has not gone to convention for the last, 30 years, meaning, generally speaking, there's a clear front runner. All the other candidates give up before that time, and that's kind of what happened. The closest it's been to going to convention in a while is Obama versus Hillary, and we'll get to that in a minute, just as an example. So, generally speaking, it's decided within the first couple months. Or the first month or so. The Iowa caucus is the first one in the nation. This map doesn't really show it. Let me just see if I can find it. Here we go. So this is 2016. I just had the other one up because it showed totals. So as you can see, we're in February now. So the primaries that are going to happen this month, are only Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada. Are any of these states large? No. New Hampshire is one of the small states in the Union. Iowa is a moderately small state. Nevada is not overly large, nor is South Carolina. Let me just check. Yeah, none of those states are very large at all. But they're the only chance that we have to. They're the only chance we have to see an actual vote before what's called Super Tuesday, which is in March, where over half the states vote on one day. It's called Super Tuesday because it generally speaking, if it hasn't been decided yet, it's decided on Super Tuesday. You would think California would be important, but it goes too late to matter. So Iowa is generally seen as a bellwether, because if you win Iowa and you win New Hampshire, then it seems to indicate that you have momentum. Does it actually matter in terms of delegates? No, but public perception is everything in a presidential race. Who's up, who's down, who has momentum, etc. It never goes to convention, so actual delegate counts don't really matter as much as winning early states to give the impression that you're doing well. Ron Paul was very popular in Iowa, and he believed if he could have won Iowa, then everything would have turned out for him. So let's just kind of look at what the last primaries were. So this is back in 2008, where we have Obama and Hillary. So as you can see, Hillary won a whole bunch of states. Obama, I think, won slightly more delegates despite Hillary getting more of the popular vote. So let's look at it. So Obama got 2,300 delegates, and Hillary got 1,900 delegates, despite getting a larger percentage of the popular vote. Obama did very well in those states largely because there's an African American population. Now, it should be noted that some states have only party members can vote, some states have anyone can vote. So, what often will happen is Republicans or Democrats will go to the other party and vote for whoever they think is the least electable, or just to cause chaos. And that happened a lot because they thought Hillary was less electable than Obama, so a lot of Republicans voted for Hillary. Um, so yeah, so we have so as we can see here, Hillary won a couple fairly large states by an overwhelming majority, but Obama had a lot more kind of spread power, so he was able to get the majority of delegates needed to win. Hillary eventually conceded before the convention happened. Um, she conceded on June 3rd, whereas the final vote was on August 28th. So that was kind of the closest it's come in recent years. And then we had the Republican primary of 2012, where if we look at this, we had Newt Gingrich won South Carolina and Georgia. Mitt Romney won the overwhelming majority of the country, and Rick Santorum. There's different ways of doing it. Ron Paul actually got the most delegates in a couple states, but lost the popular vote. Um, and ultimately, what happened was Romney got most of the delegates. The territories also have delegates, even though they don't have electoral votes. And the overseas members of the party also get to vote, and members of the military. So, here's just another map from 2008. Mike Huckabee won a couple states. Ron Paul won none. Um, Romney won a whole bunch, and John McCain won an overwhelming majority. So, um, as you can see, there's very few states in February, and it's really going to be the first time that we can see these guys. We can see who is viable, because the Donald is really high in the polls, but until he actually starts winning delegates and they have a roll call to show that he can translate that into reality, it's just kind of a bunch of smoke. Hillary has been leading the whole time, but she's been declining, and she could be in really major trouble. Bernie Sanders' voter base is largely white liberals. White people really like him. Black people will vote for Hillary, but they don't really like her. But Bernie Sanders has a lot of appeal to kind of the white working class, kind of similar to the Donald. So Iowa is a very white state, as is New Hampshire, and New Hampshire is very kind of an oddball state. In some ways, it's the most libertarian and kind of one of the more left-wing states. It's a very odd kind of exception. But Bernie is leading by a huge margin in New Hampshire, and he's tied with Hillary there. So if he can win both the two early primary states, the math doesn't favor him in the remaining states, but he will have momentum. The media will cover it as an upset, and the Hillary campaign could very well start to get bogged down and even disintegrate over the failure of her inevitability. If Hillary wins both states, then the campaign may very well be over, although I think Sanders will continue to fight. The same thing is kind of with the Donald. If the Donald wins both of those states, I think the campaign's largely over, and he will prove that he can translate his lead into reality. So it's quite possible that the whole nomination process will be decided tomorrow night. If Ted Cruz can win Iowa and maybe another early state, we might see this kind of carry on for a while yet. It's very hard to say, though. The polls are all over the place. Keep in mind, Iowa is a tiny state, and the caucuses is a rather Byzantine process. So that's kind of how it works. So this is a preview, which I should have mentioned earlier. This is explaining how the presidential thing works, why Iowa is important, and there will be a live stream tomorrow starting at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time, and I will be covering this in real time. I've got screen capture worked out. We're going to be watching the results as they come in. We're going to be breaking it down and analyzing it for you. Please join us. This is Argent signing out.